Resuming the meeting after a quick 10-minute break. Right, we've done apologies for absence, so I'll move on to agenda item 3, which is the minutes. It's recorded that the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of January 2023, found on pages 5 to 22, and the continuation of the meeting on the 9th of February 2022 on pages 23 to 66 are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Councillor. And okay, moving on.
Chairman.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I know you were seconded. Just a query, actually, it might have been answered by what I see on the screen up there, but regarding the meeting of the 9th of February, where it was a continuation, and it's on page 29 and under 14, it was of urgent business, private and confidential. It does say, in response to a point of order and questions raised, the senior specialist legal provided the committee with a... Now, at that meeting, there was only one director present and one other officer. So can I ask, having seen now Emma Holmes on there, was Emma Holmes present? I couldn't recall that. So I just asked that for clarification. It may have been that Emma was present, like she is tonight, but I just couldn't remember that bit. I can recall Mr. Holmes being there, and I can remember Sue Green. There was no other officer present, but it does say there was a response from the senior specialist legal. So I just asked, was that done via on screen? Because I noticed Emma's there tonight. I couldn't recall it. Thank you.
Tara, do we know if Miss Holmes was present?
I can just double check there at the moment, Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
I couldn't check on the recording because obviously private and confidential. What I could only see is the first part of the meeting who was present or not.
That might well be an error on my behalf, Chairman. Apologies.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Councillor Chandler, for pointing that one out. Very well spotted. Okay, moving on.
Read the papers, Madam Chairman. I'll read the papers.
Moving on to agenda item 4, which is disclosure of interest, to disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraph 9 and appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interests as soon as they become aware should the need arise throughout the meeting. So do we have any disclosures for interest? No? Okay. Public participation to receive the views of members of the public of which prior notification in writing has been received no later than noon on the Tuesday prior to the day of the meeting. Do we have any public speakers, Tara? Sorry, Miss Bird.
Chairman, sorry, no, we don't. I have just gone back and checked my notes for that 9th of February meeting, and Miss Holmes was present in that meeting.
Oh, she was present. Okay. Thank you, Miss Bird. Right. Okay. No problem at all. Well done for plotting it. Okay. Right. Agenda item 6, which is the Climate Action Plan for 23-24, and Mr. Holmes is going to present this item.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. I welcome the opportunity to present to you this excellent piece of work this evening. The Climate Action Plan was developed over a 4-month period in collaboration with officers across all services and functions to comprise a set of smart actions that's specific, measurable, agreed, relevant and time-bound. The actions are linked directly to the 5 approved core pledges that are set out in the Climate Action Strategy, and as a reminder they are: kick the car habit, create less waste, show nature we care, be an authority that leads by example, and have a strong policy commitment to climate action. Each action has been given a short, medium or long-term time frame and a desired output we would propose to track progress quarterly through the Council's Performance, Governance and Audit Committee. The actions have also been linked to co-benefits that link to the community, place, economic growth, and such as producing improving health, increasing jobs and increasing community engagement. Actions will be either undertaken by the Council or in collaboration with external partners, and often funding will be sought or hopefully allocated in some cases. A list of external partners is set out on page 6 of the action plan. The initial Climate Action Plan sets out our community engagement actions for 2023 to 2024. Throughout this time, we will continue to engage and support the community with their activities. We already have approved budget for this in the 23-24 year. The Climate Action Plan supports our new corporate plan, Priority for a Greener Future. Having this climate action plan will enable the Council to actively deliver against the corporate plan and the climate action strategy, and therefore demonstrates the strategy through to delivery. This update to members is a positive step in identifying ways to reduce carbon emissions and increase climate resilience across the district. The recommendation is that members note the climate action plan and approve that the plan will be monitored and reports through the Performance Governance and Audit Committee itself. Unfortunately, our climate officer is unwell with COVID this evening, but Georgina Button has kindly made herself available this evening to assist with any questions members may have. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Members? Okay, Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Mr Holmes on this occasion. It's a very good piece of work. There's a couple of questions, I think about 3, that I'd like to consider. First one is section 3.9 on page 68. Yes, we've talked about the targets, and I've looked at the targets and the designated outputs, but I have a concern about the long-term targets. Now, I know that we're going to be reviewing these, but there's no specific time-bound unit of measurement that says we aim to achieve, our aspirations to achieve by this date, this action. We just have a long term, a medium term with a year on it. So I'd personally like to see a little bit more detail with it will be done by X amount, and then what the units of measurement are against about raising that target. So the detail about what the action plan actually is about the target. I find in section 4, 4.2, we talk about, we're taking a climate emergency serious. We've got to embed that in everything we do. And I went down the prom the other day and there was a diesel ice cream van pumping away out there. And that was raised in the past and concerned by members. So if we're going to do this, we need to do this properly. So we need to use it as part of every part of our decision-making process. And I understand why that unit's there, but I hope you understand the intent of which I'm making that statement. Interested in really how much the plan's going to cost us. I know we've got allocated funds, but I'd like to actually know what the actual financial spend is. And 3.5 on page 67 talks of external funding opportunities. Can that be explained in more details what they actually are? Because we've got the partners, but where's this funding coming from? And I know some of us aspirations to get money in from other areas and other funds, and we're good at that. But I'd like to know a bit more about that. And second from last point is how does the climate action strategy work alongside planning applications? When we know that it's one of the areas of great concern when cycle paths, bridleways and bus transportation is often sadly lacking, and the synergy that's needed to have a holistic transport action plan is a challenge for us all. So really, it's a great piece of work. I absolutely concur with that, but they're the areas that I'd like to have a little bit more detail on, if that's possible, please. Thank you.
Okay, I think Miss Button will be able to help with that one. Miss Button?
Yeah, I'll try and run through that list. Good evening, members and Chair. So going back to Councillor Lagan's points about long term, so our climate action strategy sets out a period for the strategy which runs up until 2030. So I think Claire, our climate officer, has set out the definition of short, medium and long term, and then against each of the actions she has set out whether it is a short, medium or long term achievable action, reminding members that this plan's just for the period of the next 12 months. So it's not a full 8-year plan, it is an annual action plan as committed and approved by the climate action strategy. So it is delivering against the commitment to set out what we're going to achieve in the next 12 months. But what Claire has kindly done is also included that longer term thinking for medium term and long term. So long term, really the deadline is 2030. And yeah, we have to start looking at what those longer term things are and if they are achievable. But most climate action plans have anywhere between 200 and 300 actions in them. Climate action is huge and it does cover everything that we do, as Councillor Lagan has rightly said. In terms of embedding it in everything we do, that's something we have done. We've provided staff with training members with carbon literacy training, and we will be continuing to do that. We ask for every financial decision incorporates a green option, so that even if it's incredibly expensive, it's still set out as an option with the benefits, so that members have the option to make that decision if sustainability is deemed the priority. And if it's simply not, then obviously at least it's being included as an option. But you're right, Councillor Lagan, we are trying very much to work across the whole of the council with staff to ensure that there is that climate action thinking, to the point that every member of staff, where they've got their personal smart objectives, they've been asked to have a climate action objective, so that they are bringing it into the work that they're doing. And that will only improve as we do more and more of this over the next few years. In terms of budget, that was approved last year. So there was a growth bid in last year's budget that was approved, and what that did was approve the budget for the resource, which is the Climate Action Officer, and an engagement budget over a 3-year period. And so for next year, that is over 24,000, off my head, 24,800 for the next 12 months. So obviously not a huge amount, but it does enable us to work with our community groups and our partners to be able to engage and promote the work that we're doing. Does it enable us to deliver major infrastructure programs, major projects? No, it doesn't, because that has to be done through the engagement with our partners as set out on page 6. And we have to work with them to make sure that this district receives either an allocation of funding or is included in the rollout of any programmes that Essex County Council and other partners deliver. So that's what this plan is trying to set out to do. It's stating what those activities are and who we're working with to make sure that this district is receiving some engagement and will ultimately see some delivery from that. What was the other questions? I think. Any questions, Councillor Levin?
Yeah, I think.
Budget, wasn't it?
Yeah, budget. I've got that. Yeah, I just a quick comment and a thank you. It's really refreshing to have somebody come back and give you the detail to the question. So thank you, Miss Button, for that. I do still have a concern about the targets and the makeup of those and the structure of that. But I think that gives me a bit more reassurance and comfort within what was being presented. So I thank you, Miss Button.
Okay, Councillor Morgan and then Councillor Channer.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Having recently become a cyclist, I've got a personal interest in this particular question. I'm just looking at the kick the car habit part. And whilst I see cycling is actually mentioned, I don't see any mention of cycle lanes. Is there any plan to include these in the highways or roads, or any way with the highways authority to actually include these at all in the district road work?
Yeah, we do that already within our place work. So our place strategy team lead works very closely with our national cycle pass to make sure that there is that connectivity, and that has been included in the work that we're doing with Essex County Council on developing our sustainable transport, strategic transport strategy, which is work that we're doing right now with Essex County Council. So a key part of that is making sure that cycle lane infrastructure is in place and that our district is connected through those cycle lanes. So when that strategic transport strategy is ready to present and share with you, we'll be able to present exactly what that looks like.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you, that's helpful. But are they actually going to be specifically marked on the roadway at all?
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Are they going to be marked on the road? The cycle routes?
I would like to think they are, but it depends on the scheme itself. So it will be scheme by scheme basis in terms of the markings that are required. We are absolutely pushing for that. So if I had Officer Jackie Longman with me right now, she'd be able to tell you that detail. But we can certainly come back to you on that, Councillor Morgan, if that helps. But yeah, absolutely, please be assured that where there is the opportunity to provide proper cycle lane markings, we are asking for that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Channer?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I'd just like to say I think Mrs. Button's been involved in this from the very beginning, the strategy and obviously the action plan, so I think it's an admirable piece of work. I'm very pleased we've now got the Climate Action Officer on board, because certainly in the short time she has been here, there has been some really good work done in terms of how locally we're working with parishes. And certainly I'm aware of the Haybridge group, there's Tollesbury as well, and we've got the Dengie group as well, which is doing some good work getting our residents involved. What I'd like to ask is, I mean, we've been for a while now without our Coast and Countryside Officer, and I see there's a fair number of elements within here that falls to the responsibility. And I believe we've now got a Coast and Countryside Officer on board. I'm particularly interested in the green infrastructure strategy, because that went back to 2019. It appears to be a high priority area. When we're talking about that, I think I agree with Councillor Lagan. I'd like to know in terms of what that does mean. And I'm also very interested, and was with the previous Coast and Countryside Officer, regarding participation in the Essex Forest Initiative and the tree planting. And I just wonder how that will be reported to members, because I'd be quite interested to see the outcomes, as it were. I think sometimes we can have outputs, and this isn't a criticism, because I think this is an excellent document, but obviously I'm very keen in seeing outputs. Outcomes rather, not outputs, outcomes. So I wonder if I could just have assurances that a lot of this work which the new officers come on board for will be of high priority areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Holmes?
Jim, yes, just to reassure members, the officer started this week, very experienced officer, comes from a background with the Environment Agency, but is fully skilled with a number of attributes that will help us complete this work. So absolutely, he will contribute to this plan. So first week in, that will be part of his own SMART objectives to actually deliver against this plan. So we can give you that assurance. Okay,
Councillor Swain and then Councillor Shaughnessy.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Three things. I was at the Essex Climate Conference a couple of days ago, which was concerned with retrofitting. And obviously we're not directly involved much in that, but it does mean that we need to be sure that what housing associations are doing, who do have access to their special funds, and to be sure that they're doing what they can do to retrofit housing in their housing associations. The other aspect on housing is whether we will be able to insist in with new developments through the local development plan on all new housing being of the top energy rating levels, A and B or whatever. Lastly, if I may refer back to Councillor Morgan's point, I think was on cycle lanes. It's quite clear that a lot of roads in, particularly in Malden, I won't speak for Burnham, but in Malden, there just isn't the scope to delineate separate lanes, except on some of the outer roads, perhaps. But this is one of the reasons, or the alternative approach, which I've been advocating, is to have a 20-mile-an-hour zone for the centre of the town, which the idea of which is to encourage a different culture amongst drivers, and to make it more safer for cyclists as well as pedestrians, of course. And that may be more practical given the very narrow, restrictive nature of our town centre roads here.
Thank you. Okay, we've got Councillor Shaughnessy and then Councillor... I'm having a brainstorm now. Siddle, sorry. Okay, Councillor Shaughnessy, sorry.
Thank you. Can I speak, gents, please? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I too would like to, yes, congratulate Georgina and the team behind this, of course, because a lot of work has gone into it. But I have to say there is one glaring omission, and that is diet. Now, we should all know that meat eating is one of the huge polluters across the world, and it is very rarely mentioned because it's not popular. But that is a fact, and I think it should come into all of these strategies. You know, you're not going to change people's eating habits overnight, but if we ignore it completely, then they're not even going to change a little. You know, there is far too much meat eating in this country, in other countries around the world. Some countries don't even have the luxury of it, and they're probably healthier than us as well in some cases. But it is a fact, and I would like it to be introduced into these strategies, and I would like some comments on that, please. Thank you.
Miss Button?
It's all right if I first answer Councillor Swain's 3 points.
Okay.
Just to comment on those, because he made some really good points. So in terms of retrofitting, yeah, we don't have our own stock. However, I make sure I meet with our housing partners to make sure they have a decarbonisation plan so that they are improving the fabric of their housing stock. You know, we know there are issues in terms of making housing sound, but it's also making sure it's sustainable for the future. And how housing providers are doing that is by applying for the decarbonisation fund. And once they are successful with that, and also using their own investment, they are then either offsetting or they are simply investing in retrofitting. And we do have examples of that in the district. Certainly through with Energy Strong and other initiatives. So it's something we want to continue working with, and we are expecting our housing providers to have a clear plan of how they're going to support retrofit. We're also working with our partners at Essex County Council and businesses that are providing skills and training so that jobs are created to be able to ensure that retrofitting can take place and it can be done locally, and our local economy benefits from that. The second point was existing new developments, adhere to these sorts of expectations. Absolutely, policy and legislation will do that, and it will do that through future home standards, of which we will have to maintain and ensure our policies are up to date, and shows that we do have a strong policy commitment to climate action. And that's something that our Climate Action Officer and our planning policy team are starting to work with our development management team in planning to make sure that we are consciously mindful of that and bringing that into the work that we're doing. And then I think the 20-mile speed zones, yeah, absolutely. And I think that also goes hand in hand with the air quality management that we're working on, and that has all been fed into the strategic transport strategy work that we're doing with Essex County Council. So again, we will be bringing that to members for presentation at some point later this year. And then just go back to Councillor Shaughnessy. I suppose the difficulty that we have is veganism and promoting it is a sensitive matter. But what we have already done in terms of local economies, we have welcomed vegan markets to the district, and we have, through our community work, through our health and wellbeing and One Malden District Partnership, made sure that we are making sure that climate action feeds into the work of the community strategy theme, so that we are conscious of health and wellbeing. And that includes homegrown initiatives, which is set out in the Climate Action Plan. So we are providing things like seed packs, growing vegetables within your own garden, providing training for that. What we're not necessarily doing is leading on campaigns that talks about meat eating being a bad thing, because that's not necessarily for us to lead on that agenda, but we are here to educate and inform in terms of options that people can have for their health and their well-being, and that we're trying to give them a choice and the skills to be able to take part in things like community kitchens, growing your own, and making sure that links through to much more better health outcomes. So I don't think it's not the work isn't taking place. I think we are very much doing all of that, but probably more through our health and wellbeing work that we're focused on through other strategies and wellbeing alliances. but definitely take your point. I think that was the points, Chair.
Okay, you should come back.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thanks very much. I think we can do more. I wasn't suggesting going straight to veganism either. I mean, you know, there is a halfway point, which is vegetarianism, you know, which includes cheese and eggs and things. So yeah, I'm not thrilled with the response, to be perfectly honest with you. But you know, I'll have to leave it there. I shall run my personal campaign.
Thank you. Councillor Siddle.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. One of the things that would be nice for us to see, I don't know whether we have signed up to this at all, but one of the things that the parishes have been doing, and yeah, we've done it at our parish, and that is to pass a motion that the parish supports 20 is plenty across Essex. So there's a 20 is plenty scheme for all residential areas. Is that something that the council should sign up to as well, to support that campaign, yeah, and be part of that campaign in terms of introducing 20 is plenty across all residential areas in the district? So that's my first point.
I think that's something that you'd have to bring forward.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, because I think that's one of the crucial ways that we're lobbying Essex County Council at the moment, is by signing up to that scheme. I think the report is fantastic. I think the aims are fantastic. My concern is we're trying to do too much with not enough resource. Yeah. So that's the big, and I know it's in one of the key risks, is the lack of resources to deliver the plan. So I think what we've got to try and do is try and be clever about it and try and prioritise where our focus should be. So last week, for example, and Essex is the one that's got the money for all this, and to a certain extent has got investment to do things. Last week I went round the Little Totton parish with an officer from Essex County Council, and we have planned 5 acres of new trees in Little Totton, and those trees are coming free. Part of it is Malden District Council land, so I need to speak to Richard about that. But it is about, you know, those are the sort of things we've got to encourage parishes to do. That's what we've got to Essex to do. I said to him, yeah, out of the whole of Essex, how many parishes have engaged with you? It was 10 out of the whole of Essex. Yeah, so we need to, in terms of us, is to really get Claire and to try and get behind that and get other parishes in the Malden district to get involved in all these free trees. We've got until 2025 to access these free trees. That's the sort of thing again that we're doing. We're now looking at restoration of a pond. So it's all those things that we can really make a difference, and accessing those things from Essex County Council. And you're right, those bodies are really, really important, because there is only so much that Malden District Council can do. But I think it's great, but we need to focus, we need to prioritise, and we need to make sure that we are badgering those people to deliver for Malden.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. Congratulations, Georgina and the whole team. Excellent piece of work. Everyone else has already said it, but please believe I support them in all of that. Mrs. Button has already touched on the producing local food, and I think that is very important, because I have a feeling, although I have no figures, that a locally raised cow or sheep probably does less damage to the environment than schlepping coconuts and almonds from the other side of the world, where growing them uses fantastic amounts of water as well. The other thing, the issue with dairy, and I understand that, and also, by the way, I am a vegetarian who doesn't farm, so I have no axe to grind on any of this. The dairy industry relies very heavily on the meat industry, because cows have babies, and somebody has to do something with the babies, because roughly half of those are male, and without a beef industry, there really is no dairy industry. So that's going to be fun to look at one of these days. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor, well, this is a fun time. You can come back, because I want to keep this meeting on track. So Councillor Lagan, then Councillor Channer, then Councillor Fluker.
Yeah, I'll just, normally with Councillor Shawnee, so I normally agree with nearly everything you say, but I would absolutely hate for us to put that type of view into this type of document. I think the awareness and the education. My wife's a pescatarian. We don't eat hardly any meat at all now because of the things that we have. We don't have intensive farming. Yeah, but that's a personal choice, Flo. What we're saying in here is we're forcing people to be something that they have a choice to be. That's not our role for that. Our role is to educate and give people the option if they want to do it. Shouldn't fit in this plan.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Channer?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a question, really, and I'm sure Georgina and Claire are aware of this. Are we aware of that? Well, I'm going to ask the question now, of having said she's probably aware of it. The Net Zero Innovation Programme that the LGA are involved in, because today I actually went to the, there was sustainability regarding council services webinar, and it was from the Innovation Hub, and that was very, very interesting, hearing other councils and how they're doing this, and about the sustainability and about zero carbon and what actually authorities should be doing across all our services, actually, not just leaving it and think just sort of a couple of elements or so. There's a way we have integration across this, across the whole of the council. So Georgina's nodding, so she is aware. So that's fine, but it was very, very enlightening, I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fluker?
Sorry, did Miss...
Oh, no, she was nodding, I think.
Okay, right. Yeah, well, a couple of things. Yeah, I appreciate that we agreed the budget for this some time ago. Don't have a problem with that. But when we did, we didn't know what the outcome was going to be, how bad it was going to be for this financial year. And we certainly didn't know how bad it was for the next financial year. So I think going forward, I think that when we are dealing with non-statutory work streams, I think we should have a little bit more impact on resources financial, so members can actually see what we're investing in non-statutory, the delivery of non-statutory projects. I mean, overarchingly, I don't have a problem with this. I mean, I totally accept Councillor Shaughnessy's view, but then if we go down that line and we accept what this report says, which basically said we should have lots of solar farms everywhere, then we won't be growing any crops or eating any meat. So I'm not sure where that takes us to. But Chairman, I've got a few points to raise, so I'll be as brief as I can. On the introduction, Chairman, for some bizarre reason, I've lost my numbers, page numbers, but on the introduction, it says avoid carbon-intensive activities. I mean, the point I'd like to raise there is that we're just about to spend £100,000 cutting down trees in principally the Promenade Park. I wondered whether or not we're realigning our procurement now to ensure that contractors use biofuels or even hydrogen units. And I know that there are some tree surgeons in the district that actually do operate using such equipment. So I think it's really important that we look at how our contractors that we're procured with are actually going to operate within this plan. I'm ever so sorry, I've got no page numbers on this for some bizarre reason, so I'm now on the one which, I beg your pardon, page 75. Look, Market Hill, this has been dragging on forever and a day. You know, we've been talking about this for a long, long time, so I think we need to either do something about Market Hill and the air quality. We were hoping to get receptors at Latchington because the National Health Service have identified a problem in Latchington now, so it'd be nice to do that as well. So moving on to my next point, which is on page 77. I mean, this is hugely ambiguous, this, and you know, it says here the council will lobby Essex County Council for funding for walking and cycling projects via MTFTS and designated funds from the A12 widening. So what we're going to do is we're going to sort of widen the A12, bring lots more cars on into it because that's why we widen it, so the cars are going, and then we're going to take money out of that and put it into this. I mean, one wonders whether or not we should be telling people not to drive their cars on the A12 and abide by this policy, which, by the way, I don't think you can implement it. I think the policy on vehicles should be to encourage people to have electric cars, Chairman, like yourself and I, and have dual fuel, because that's clearly the way forward. So I thought that was a little bit ironic. And there's something else in here, and I mean, I'll happily give way to the Section 151 officer, but on page 78, it talks about deterring car use in Morden Town Centre. Well, if we were to deter car use in Morden Town Centre, then the MTFS will fall on its head because it's dependent on car park income. So are we saying that we're going to deter it and that's going to affect the MTF? I don't know. It doesn't seem to me very joined up to me. And I can see Miss Button nodding, so I'm not expecting you to come back on all of these. I'm just hoping you'll take them on board. But there just seems to be a conflict there between the medium-term financial strategy, the Central Area Master Plan, and the cap. So I shall go on. And then on page 70, I think it's page 80, 79 or 80, and this is the one, improving waste life cycle so that we are managing waste more sustainably. Now look, we're talking here about having flats, or as we call them these days, apartments. But this council in the last 3 months has approved planning applications where you've got commingled collections for apartment blocks. So this really makes no sense. Either, we stop this or we don't, but we can't say we're going to encourage them to do this, because the last developer that came into this chamber for one of the Haybridge development sites, I asked them, I checked tonight and I listened to the tape, and I said to them, are you going to provide proper recycling areas so that the people that live in these apartments can recycle, can sort their own waste like most of us do? And the answer was no. They're going to just have one big bin store for 10 apartments. Everything goes in commingled. So we certainly need to do some work around that. So I'm sorry, because I just found an awful lot more. So the next one is protect and enhance biodiversity in the council's estate. Well, that's interesting, because I was in the Promenade Park last week and they appear to be spraying everything with Roundup. So chemical weed killers and fertilisers. I mean, this really needs to be. It really needs to be. There needs to be a deep dive in some of these statements in relation to what our existing practices are. And on page 81, now I've got a question, Miss Button. I'm dying to find out, and you can wait to the end, what a water cycle study completed is, because I'm not sure what that is, but I was at Holywell Outfall the other day, and I was watching the Southminster Sewerage Farm pumping untreated sewage into the Crouch. I'm not sure if that's what that's to do with, but I would like to know what a water cycle study is. Hang on, I've got. So then I go on to link exercise to waste. I mean, this is quite a bizarre one. We're around Ashford and Dengie in Southminster. We do sort of 6 litre picks a year. Yeah. I don't think any of us are sort of disposed to jogging while we're doing it. But there's what it says here. You have to jog now when you do it says this support promotes existing new litter picking activities across the district. So that's basically saying it's okay to litter. The way I read that. What this should say is this should run in line with a policy that we should always, without fail, prosecute people that do drop litter and fly tip. I mean, I find that quite strange, that one. And then the welcoming solar farm developments. Well, we've heard comments tonight about not eating meat. We've all got to eat. We know that the price of grain has gone through the roof. And of course, every time you have a solar farm development, regardless of what the developer says at the time, if you visit one afterwards, you will just see that underneath all of the panels, it's basically a desert. Nothing grows, and the biodiversity is not brilliant. It's a fact. So I'm surprised that one is in there. And then I think on page 82, it includes farms located in the Upper Blackwater area of Morden. This is supports sustainable farming. I mean, unless you throw money at the farmers, they will not support sustainable farming. It's up to the businesses, it's up to the farmers whether they to buy into this, and I don't think many will, knowing how they've lost their EU grants. And I've already spoken about the tree contract, and it goes into, on page 83, it does actually cover this off about making sure that whoever we procure with, that the companies that they demonstrate sustainability and support the council's net zero carbon ambitions. So when I drill into the letting of the letting in of the tree contract, which I understand Essex County Council are letting, then I will expect to see that one of the criteria is that we make sure that they are going to support this policy, because I believe that the companies that do use these type of equipment fail to get on the procurement list at the council. And hopefully, Chairman. Well, I've spoken to food production, so I won't dwell on that any longer on page 84. And a question on page 85, it says, Human Resources Code of Conduct being reviewed to consider various matters including impacts on environment. So I'm not quite sure what that means.
Ms Button?
And that is my lot, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Fluker.
So I'm quite happy for Miss Button just to have a listen to the tape afterwards and respond back to us all on the points that I've raised. But I do think, there's some stuff in there that does tend to conflict with other policies, particularly the medium-term financial strategy, which concerns me enormously.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, as chair, I've got a few comments that I'd like to make anyway. And, when we talk about Pledge 1, which is kick the car, I'm a bit disappointed that we're not being more proactive on the solar panels and chargers for cars. I'd like to see that being splashed everywhere, encouraging people to get their own car chargers to enable electric car use. So I've said we both use cars. That's one thing I'd like to see coming forwards. And the car parking that was brought up, not sure which councillor brought that up, that was a very good point, because it is one of our very good income streams. And I'd like to see, rather than trying to ban cars, I'd like to see a way of encouraging electric or hydrogen or other cars and vehicles to come in and use our lovely facilities, because we need the tourism and we need the income from car parks. So for me, that's vitally important. So we've got to be careful we don't cut our nose off to spite our face. And it's all about the emissions. So I think that's something I'd like to see built in. And again, I'm a bit disappointed that that's not in there. On Pledge 02, which is to create less waste, in actual fact, I sit on the Waste Committee, and we are I think we are the best authority in Essex for waste collection, and that's all down to Carol Love. And I think it was funny because Essex County Council was saying that the authorities are trying to get the waste collections we've already got. And I stood up and I said, well, thanks to Carol Love, I said, we've already got all these systems, so we can't rest on our laurels. But again, I think it was Councillor Fluker said, we need to prosecute when people drop litter, when they flight it, we need to jump straight on it. So that's something I'd like to see strengthened in the policy. On the sustainable farming, I will say that we are farmers, and we have in the past had cattle. But I would say most farmers are environmentally friendly. We've actually got one of the very best areas for Brent geese, and we don't have to keep the grass, but we do. So the government's very, very pleased with that. And I think most farmers are the same. And also with sustainable farming, when chemicals were touched on, this is really very highly regulated by DEFRA. And I mean, I have a qualification for the application of sprayings, including water-based, and they are working very closely on what chemicals you can use, how you can use them. And for instance, slug pellets, which contained metaldehyde, are banned in the UK. I think they're still usable in parts of Europe, but we've actually banned them here. So I think DEFRA is the one to be in charge of chemicals, so I think that's a bit beyond Malden. But I think, I do promote it, and I think we should, rather than trying to kick the car completely, we need to promote electric cars and other cars that really are no emissions. And we need to, we can change policy, but for me, we need to encourage members of the public to put car chargers in. You know, we can be far more proactive and not be held back by the plans and one thing and another. So I think as some of the other members have said, I think Councillor Channer said, I would like to see this outcome based and focused on what outcomes we want to get, and local Malden outcomes, not necessarily Essex wide. You know, me personally, I'm interested in our district. We've got a beautiful district. Let's keep it that way and let's improve it where we can. But anyway, there weren't any questions there, but I just wanted to say how important it is to me. Right, okay, members. Let's move on to agenda item 7, which is delivering. The recommendation there. Hold on 1 second. I'll just get to it. I've got to my little bit. Here we go. Back a page. Right. The recommendations are, if I can get on the right page, are that the members note the council's annual climate change action plan for 23-24 attached to Appendix 1, and approve that it will be monitored quarterly via quarterly performance reports to the PGA committee. But I would also like to add that into the recommendation that the thoughts and responses of the Strategy and Resources Committee are built into that report as well, because I think everybody's made valuable points that I'd like to see included, and I think it's important those points are included. Would that be possible to add that in, please, Tara? Miss Bird? Well, my own motion is that we add these in. Members, so do I have a seconder for my motion? Thank you, Councillor Fluker. Okay, all those in favour, all agreed? Thank you, everybody. Okay, right, moving on to, finally, to agenda item 7, which is delivery of the corporate plan for 23-27 priority, helping the economy to thrive, on pages 89 to 92. And we have Mr. Ellam to present.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Further to the recent approval of our corporate priorities, I'm pleased to share with you some of the current and future headline work streams to deliver on helping our economy thrive. Members, of course, recognise it continues to be one of the most challenging and turbulent times for local business. This is therefore a very important but broad area of work which the whole council must commit to achieving. Accordingly, these initiatives have been developed with input from across the council and with partners, and we've proposed to offer further member briefings to provide transparency, confidence, as well as additional time for member input. And hopefully all members have received these provisional invites, and subject to approval, I'll send a reminder tomorrow, and the recordings of those sessions, of course, will be shared. We wanted to highlight the launch of the Locate Malden District, our first investment and business-facing microsite. The formation of the Malden District Tourism Group, known as the T23. The development of the Supporting Local Business Programme, which has evolved from the closure of our Sense of Place business network approach. A point on that is to note that the district brand, also known as Sense of Place and Times, is ongoing, and that's unaffected by the closure of the business network approach. And 2 projects that form part of our Shared Prosperity funded programme, that is the investigation of options to revitalise Malden Market, and our intention to work with the Rural Community Council of Essex to seek Magnox funding to support and enhance the delivery of the Council's Rural England Prosperity Fund allocation. As I said, there's quite a lot in one report, so I hope it demonstrates some of the volume and value being delivered in pursuit and support of our local businesses and economy. Thank you.
Okay, before we go anywhere else, members? Councillor Swain?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I note there the mention about a key thing being doing something about Malden Market. I really can't see any future for the existing outdoor market that we have here. But what would be, I think, attractive is an indoor market somewhere, or facilities that could be, or premises that would not only allow for an indoor market or markets, but also provide space for other community-related activities. That seems to be much more attractive as a central point, but in line with the idea that high streets now should have much more of a community focus, as well as providing scope for things like pop-up shops, which is the way I see the markets going. in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Swain. Mr. Allen? Yeah.
Yeah, very happy to come back on that one. I'm inclined to agree. I think indoor markets is a really interesting opportunity. Unfortunately, as you understand, they have significant capital or at least revenue costs to run that, to have the space to do that. That's not within the budget allocation that we're working with at the moment. However, I think I would want us to be very positive about any third party wanting to take some space to do such a thing. On the approach to the market in its current location, at least that's the one considered most viable by the consultants in the report that was undertaken last year. We are exploring options for it. We're not committing any funds at this stage. We do have opportunity to use grant funding for it, but it would be subject to an expression of interest or a soft market offer coming forward, that we could then run a competitive process to support them.
Actually, if I might come back, I thought we'd allocated 25,000 to research into the feasibility of the market, which I had a bit of a query about at the Strategy and Resources agenda meeting.
Not quite. We have put a £25,000 allocation into our investment plan for the Shared Prosperity Fund. But we are running a soft market engagement exercise, essentially an expression of interest exercise, where we will look for people who want to do a market that could bring forward a business case to us that we could support with those funds. If that isn't available, if such an opportunity and expression doesn't come forward, we would not invest any further money into any feasibility study or anything further like that.
Yeah, what I would suggest in the chair is that before any money is spent, it comes back to the Strategy and Resources Committee, because any company that wants to run the market should be able to run their own feasibility studies, and it shouldn't be down to the taxpayers of the Malden district to pay for companies' feasibility studies for them to make profits. That's something I'd like notice, please.
Can I have a quick comeback on that? And just to point out, of course, that running any extensive outdoor market in Butt Lane is possibly has an opportunity cost in terms of lost parking revenue.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I've got Councillor Lagan, and then Councillor Morgan, then Councillor Chan, and then Councillor. So Councillor Lagan, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll stand because that's how I do it. We used to have a market, didn't we? You know, those of us who are old
Yes.
and grey, and very old and very grey. We don't have one now. We only have Joe up the top, flogging his watches and putting batteries in, unfortunately. And so if the consultants are looking at putting another market in Butt Lane, then they're the wrong consultants to have hired. You know, because it's failed for years. We're a historic, if you look at some of our text, we're a historic market town without a market. We need to bring a market. And if you look at the models that other areas have, like your Chelmsfords, where it's in an area where you have footfall, and I've always maintained we could have a very nice periodic market outside All Saints Church that can run down because the pavement's that wide out there by the horse trough. But that's a personal view. So I think we do need a market. I'm not adverse to an indoor market because I think they definitely have merit, but as you say, the capital costs, the buildings, the running, that they're all a challenging issue for us. But I really feel it should be, if you're going to have that, if you're going to capture what we had in the past and what we really need, we don't want to be all things to all people. We just need a small, really powerful, quality offering that people can come in, that will draw people into town to park in the car park, to be able to migrate into the high street, to be able to do their shops and support the businesses that are there. So again, I'm flabbergasted, Mr. Ellum, that they've come around and said we should stick it in Butt Lane. You know, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm also old enough to remember the old market in, I believe the car park is still known as the former market site. So I'm aware of where that used to operate. The consultants have identified that it is a viable site, and that was their recommendation. I would point out, I suppose, that the former market site was actually further removed from the current market site is from the high street. So it was even more away from the high street frontage, not by much, I accept. just to be clear on this, we will be making no expenditure, grant funded or any otherwise, unless we find a viable business case come forward from potential operators.
Thank you for that. But I say, if they're good operators, they'll be able to do a feasibility study, and we shouldn't need to. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's frequently turning on Netflix, I see sort of some interesting and well-known landmark in the background. Does this plan include the promotion of the district for film and television production services?
Yes, indeed it does. We actively promote the area for film presentation, and we're working with the new Essex County Council's film office to do that. We have a specific web page about filming in the district on our Visit Malden District website. I'm sure there was another point, but I think I've covered it, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Channer, then Councillor Fluker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Obviously, I'm sure all members like myself appreciate the value of tourism to our district and how important that is. And obviously I'm pleased to see now we've got this T23 group set up. I think there was a precursor to that, T22. And obviously what's an important fundamental thing to me is this framework, the tourism framework, which is going to align with our events and concessions. Is the intention that we'll have an all-member briefing on this in due course? I'm obviously aware of a draft of something, so I think it is something that all members of this authority might actually find interesting and would be useful to, as long as presented in the correct context. But can I just have assurances that in due course that will come forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. And that is booked for Wednesday next week, and the invites have been sent, hopefully, to all members. I'll send a reminder tomorrow to make sure everyone's got it.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it the three? The three.
There are, yes, for clarity,
right.
there are three in the same series. One is
Right.
on inward investment and supporting local business. The second is on tourism framework and the T23, and the third is on our projects as they fall under the shared prosperity fund.
Right. Okay.
Okay, Councillor Fluker.
Thank you, Chairman. No, Mr. Ellum, as I do, he's he likes to get in with his bits of information, so I'm certainly going to top him now, and perhaps shine a light on your hopes as well, because Chairman, it's not often somebody like Stormzy comes to this district and records his latest record. So I'm sure that Mr. Ellum's keeping his powder dry, and no doubt we'll see him in the background when the video is released. But that was at OC Island, which we believe is in the district anyway, yeah, because they're advertising. As far as the teams meetings next week, I think it's a really good idea. I think the notice was a tad short, particularly as there's 3 over 3 days, and I know you're offering alternative dates, but I do wonder whether or not it might be an idea just to put those up for next week, so members have got an option straight away. I don't know what the take up is on that, but I think that would be quite useful. Chairman, going on to the report, page 90, I've got huge reservations about throwing anything at the market, really, because we've tried this many times, and I know one or two of the market holders in Chelmsford, and their concern has always been with Malden. Apparently we don't have a very good footfall in the high street on a Saturday morning, and that tends to be when most market traders do their business, and it is, if we go to Malden, we go in the afternoon and it's normally quite busy, in the morning it's quite quiet. So but I think what you're saying is it's not going to cost us anything to do that study, so that's fine by me. And the impact on risk, I don't quite understand what that means under implications 3.
Page 91.
It talks about maximising business rate growth, but are we talking about business rate as in the amount of business that's done, or the amount of tax that you pay as non-domestic rates, tax, non-domestic council tax? Because the great thing about encouraging businesses to come into this district, particularly the villages, is because they get 100% relief, which I think that's quite an important thing, and it's a good selling point because I know, for example, that parts of Sussex now, some of the district councils there are sort of moving away from that, and that for us that's a really, really good selling point. And I think another really good selling point from the members' perspective would be to perhaps audit the properties that are currently on the district council's websites, where we're advertising properties on there for tourism, and it might be worthwhile to audit those in relation to existing enforcement cases. I'll say no more than that, but I think perhaps that should be done. And the impact on the risk, whether I'm probably not reading it right.
No, I believe we're trying to say there that by having the investment prospectus and encouraging businesses to move into the area, we mitigate the risk of having vacant commercial properties that wouldn't have, we hope to have more businesses come to allocated employment areas and therefore be paying business rates.
Right, okay, I think I get it then. So, Chairman, I don't know if I'm the last one to speak, but if I am, I propose that we agree the recommendations and look forward to these 3 briefings next week and the alternative dates.
Okay, thank you, members. We've got 3 recommendations. Little 1, that members note further briefings will be offered regarding supporting local businesses and inward investment, tourism and the visitor economy, UK Shared Prosperity Fund, UKSPF, and Rural England Prosperity Fund, REPF, funded activity. Little 2, that members note the Council's Malden District T23 Tourism Group has commenced. And little 3, that members endorse the delivery of the UKSPF Year 1 Malden Market Recovery Project and the partnership with Rural Community Council of Essex to deliver the REPF. Do I have a seconder for that? Yeah, agreed. Okay, agreed? Lovely. Okay. Moving on, agenda item 8, any other items of business that the chairman of the committee decides are urgent? There are none. Agenda item 9, exclusion of the public and press, to resolve that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A to the Act, and that this satisfies the public interest test.
Thank you, Chairman, I wish to speak against agenda item 11.
It's been withdrawn.
Oh, tease, Chairman. You could have done that at the beginning. I sort of think that we made a decision on the 9th of February on that, but anyway, if that's been withdrawn.
It's been withdrawn, and I will tell you it's been resolved, but I can tell you that when we go into P&C.
Now missed my opportunity to engage with Ms. Hope,
So we're going to talk about that in private session.
Well, we've withdrawn it, but I can give you an
Why?
update.
Yeah, thank you, because I would like to know why.
Okay, Ms. Bird, do we know if we are